Block 1. This is not how weddings are supposed to start. But mine started with a phone call from a stranger and ended with my mother screaming in front of 120 guests while I stood there, veil still on, holding a secret that I had carried in silence for almost 12 years. My name is Rachel, and I was 27 when I realized my mother would rather destroy me than let me be happy. It didn't begin this way, of course. As a little girl, I imagined her helping me pick out a white dress, holding back tears as she walked me down the aisle, beaming at the man I'd chosen to spend my life with. That's what moms do, right? Except mine didn't smile at my engagement. She didn't cry tears of joy. She didn't even say congratulations. She just stared at the ring on my finger like it was something rotten, like it disgusted her. And she whispered, "Are you sure this is what you want?" I should have known then, but I brushed it off. I always did. My mom, Catherine, was never the warm, nurturing type. She was poised, perfectionistic, and deeply obsessed with appearances. Everything in our house growing up was about control. Our clothes, our hair, our expressions in public. Emotions were inconvenient to her, unless, of course, they were hers. She told people she was sensitive, that she suffered from nerves, but somehow those nerves only acted up when someone else was getting more attention than her. Especially me. When I met Josh, everything changed. He saw through all of it. My silence, my self-doubt. He loved me in a way that felt honest and whole. His family welcomed me like I was already one of them. And when he proposed, I said yes with tears in my eyes. Not because I was surprised, but because it was the first time I truly felt like I was choosing my own life. That's when the sabotage started. It began with whispers. She's rushing into it. He's not her type. She's just doing this to get away from me. Then came the dramatics. Fainting spells, sudden crying fits in the middle of bridal dress appointments, telling my aunt she had a premonition that I'd be left at the altar. But when none of that worked, when the invitations had been sent, the venue was booked, and my dress was hanging in the guest bedroom closet, she escalated. 3 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from a social worker at Mercy Behavioral Health Center. Apparently, my mom had checked herself into a psychiatric clinic, claiming she was suicidal, and said I was the reason why. I nearly dropped my phone. She told them I had emotionally abandoned her, that I was marrying Josh to punish her, that I had a pattern of cruelty she couldn't live with anymore. And the worst part? She put me down as her emergency contact. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot that day, watching nurses push gurneys and families pass through the sliding doors, and I remember thinking, what the hell is going on? What kind of mother fakes a breakdown to stop her daughter's wedding? I didn't go inside. I didn't want to see her. I couldn't. Josh wanted to cancel the ceremony. He said we could postpone it until things settled down. But I told him no. Because something deep inside me, something that had been quiet for years, was now wide awake. A voice that said, "This isn't new. This is just the first time she's been this blatant." That voice wouldn't let me pretend anymore. It wouldn't let me protect her. Because I knew a secret. One she buried years ago and prayed I'd never speak out loud. And if she was willing to lie about her mental health to ruin my future, then maybe it was time I stopped keeping hers. Block 2. If she wanted to play dirty, I could show her what silence really costs. I was 14 when I found the letters. They were hidden in a shoebox under the floorboards of the linen closet, beneath a stack of old towels nobody used. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the sewing kit. But once I opened that box, something changed forever. Inside were handwritten notes, all from the same man. Some dated back over a decade, some were newer, but they all had one thing in common. They weren't from my father. Each one started the same way, "My darling Catherine," and ended with, "One day I'll stop waiting." They weren't sweet. They weren't romantic. They were desperate, angry, bitter. He begged her to leave that boring man, meaning my dad. Told her she was wasting her brilliance playing house. Promised her freedom, money, a new life in New York. And she never wrote back, but she kept all of them. I didn't understand the full weight of it then. I just knew I had discovered something I wasn't supposed to. Something dangerous. Because when I confronted her, naive, trembling 14, I thought she'd explain. I thought she'd say it was over, that it had meant nothing. Instead, she slapped me. Hard. She told me I had no right to read her things, that it was her life, and she didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not me, not my dad. And if I ever told anyone about those letters, she swore she'd make sure my perfect little future never happened. I believed her, because even then I knew Catherine wasn't just manipulative. She was surgical. She didn't explode. She eroded you. Slowly, quietly. With smiles and guilt and gaslighting so thick, you started questioning your own memories. That night, I burned the letters in the fire pit behind our house. But I kept one. The last one. Dated 3 months before I found them. And this one was different. It talked about a daughter. Not, when will you leave him, or I miss you. No. This one said, does she know? Have you told her? Because if you don't, one day she'll find out and hate you for it. At the time, I wasn't sure what it meant. Now, I was very sure. Josh held me as I read it to him the night before the wedding. My hands trembled the whole time. Not because I was scared, but because I had made a decision. One I never thought I'd make. I was going to tell the truth. Not to punish her. Not for revenge. But because I finally understood that secrets were her currency. And I was done being broke. The morning of the wedding, she showed up. Hair done, makeup perfect, designer heels clicking against the church floor, like nothing had happened. She walked straight up to me in the bridal suite, smiled and said, "You're glowing, sweetie. I'm so glad we got through that rough patch." I stared at her, stunned. Her breakdown, her stay at the clinic, all of it, like it never happened. Like it was just a small weather event in her perfect little world. I didn't say anything. I just smiled and said, "Glad you're here, Mom." But in my bouquet was a folded piece of paper, and that paper held the letter. Block 3. For once in her life, she didn't control the room. I did. The church was beautiful. Soft piano music echoed off the stone walls. White roses lined the aisle. Candles flickered behind the altar like they were holding their breath. Everyone was smiling, whispering, crying even. You could feel it in the air. That heady, delicate energy of a moment people would remember forever. But they didn't know what kind of memory they were about to witness. I stood behind the doors, veil over my face, heart thudding in my chest like a war drum. My dad, sweet and gentle, squeezed my hand. "You okay, Rach?" he whispered. I nodded, eyes locked on the aisle ahead. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry you're about to find out your whole life was a lie." But instead, I whispered, "I love you, Dad." He didn't know. He had no idea about the letters, about the affair, about what Catherine had hidden for years behind Botox and Sunday dresses, and her obsession with being admired, and I couldn't protect him from it any longer. The doors opened, gasps, cameras, the swell of the piano, playing something slow and reverent as I stepped forward. Josh was waiting at the altar, eyes locked on mine. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just knew. And that knowing gave me strength, because even if what I was about to do burned bridges, broke hearts, or left scorched earth where our family used to be, he would still be there. Halfway down the aisle, I saw her, Catherine, front row, wearing pale blue like it was some symbol of innocence. Her legs crossed, her face serene, watching me like a proud mother watching her greatest achievement unfold. And maybe, in her mind, she thought she'd won. After all the drama, the breakdown, the guilt trips, the threats, here I was, marrying the man she tried to tear away from me. She probably thought I was choosing to forgive and forget. She had no idea. When I reached the altar, the priest smiled warmly. "Dearly beloved," he began, "we are gathered here today to witness the union of Rachel Lynn Harper and Joshua Caleb Reeves in holy matrimony." My ears buzzed. I wasn't hearing him. I was listening to my own heartbeat. I glanced at Josh. He gave me the smallest of nods, and I turned to the guests. "Before we continue," I said, my voice steady into the microphone, "I'd like to say a few words." The room quieted instantly. Most of you know me as Rachel, daughter of Catherine and Stephen, friend, co-worker, bride-to-be, and today, I was supposed to be just that. People shifted in their seats. Catherine stiffened. "But there's something I've been carrying for a long time, a truth that's been kept in shadows, a truth my mother never wanted revealed." Her smile began to crack. I reached into my bouquet and unfolded the letter. This is a letter, one of many I found when I was 14, written by a man who was not my father. Gasps echoed across the pews. Catherine shot up from her seat. "Rachel, don't." But I continued. This man begged her to leave her husband, promised her a new life. And in this letter, dated just months before I found it, he asked her if I knew. If she had told me that I might not be the daughter I thought I was. Chaos broke out. Catherine moved to rush the altar, but my aunt held her back. My dad just stared at me, pale, broken, frozen in place. I spent years wondering what was true, wondering if I was wrong for wanting to know. But when my mother faked a psychiatric crisis 3 weeks ago to stop this wedding, when she checked herself into a facility and named me as the cause of her breakdown, I realized something. Now my voice shook just slightly. She doesn't deserve my silence anymore. I turned to Josh, my hands still shaking, and whispered, "I'm ready." And just like that, the veil came off. Not just the one on my head, the one I'd been wearing for years, the one that kept me obedient, afraid, malleable. I was done. Block 4. She built her world on silence. I burned it with one sentence. For a moment, no one moved. The room felt like it had been plunged underwater. People sat frozen, their eyes darting between me and my mother, unsure of what to say, what to think, whether to keep breathing. Then came the eruption. Catherine shoved past my aunt and stormed up the aisle, face flushed, eyes wide with rage I had never seen from her in public. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice low but shaking. "You have no right." I turned the mic toward her. "Tell them I'm lying." She froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Just her eyes, desperate, cornered, scanning every face in the room. My father was still seated in the front pew, staring straight ahead like someone had hit pause on him. His hands rested limply on his knees, his mouth slightly open. "Dad," I said softly, lowering the mic. "I didn't want you to find out this way, but you needed to know." Catherine spun to him, her voice suddenly sweet, trembling with faux remorse. "Stephen, it was decades ago. It didn't mean anything. I chose you. We had a life." His hand shot up. "Stop." She went silent like a dog hit with a single word. "You told me I was crazy," he said, still not looking at her. "All those years ago, when I asked, when I found that number in your planner, you cried. You told me I was paranoid, that I was being controlling." He finally turned his head to her. "I believed you." She took a step back. I gave up so much for this family, she said, her voice trembling now, not with rage, but with panic. Everything I did was for us, for you, for Rachel. You don't understand the pressure I was under. You were never under pressure, I cut in. You created it. You made everyone walk on eggshells so you could feel superior. And when I found happiness outside your control, you imploded. You'd rather be seen as unstable than be irrelevant. More murmurs spread across the pews. I caught glimpses of people I grew up with, friends of the family, distant cousins, co-workers of my father, all wearing the same expression. What the hell did we just walk into? And still, Catherine refused to retreat. She turned to the crowd now, her voice rising like some kind of twisted sermon. You do not know what it is like to have a daughter who turns against you, who humiliates you like this. I gave her everything, and this is how she repays me? Josh stepped forward, calm, grounded, like a lighthouse in the storm. No, he said. You gave her conditions. You gave her shame. You used love like a leash and called it motherhood. She turned to him like she might lunge, but this time, it wasn't me who stepped between them. It was my father. He stood, slowly, deliberately, and for the first time in years I saw him. Not as the man who made dad jokes and grilled burgers and ignored conflict, but as someone who had been watching, waiting, and maybe just surviving too. You need to leave, he told her. Stephen. He raised his voice. Get out. Gasps rippled through the church again. Catherine stood there for another breath. Just one. And then, without a word, she turned and walked out. Alone. Click, click, click. Her designer heels echoing through the silence like a final insult. I stood there, bouquet trembling in my hands. People were crying, some out of empathy, some out of sheer awkwardness. But no one looked at me with pity. They looked at me with respect. Because I had told the truth in a place built for ceremony. I had chosen freedom over illusion. And even if the wedding ended here, I would still be free. Block 5. The truth didn't ruin my wedding. It saved my life. The doors slammed shut behind her with a thud that echoed through the sanctuary like a closing chapter. For a long moment, no one said a word. The priest had stepped back, hands folded awkwardly, clearly unsure whether to resume the ceremony or call security. The pianist had stopped playing. Even the candles seemed to flicker less brightly. Josh stood beside me, still holding my hand. Not pulling me toward the altar. Not away. Just there. Present. Real. What do you want to do? He asked quietly. And in that moment, with 100 people watching, I realized something profound. I didn't know. Because no one tells you what to do when your mother detonates your wedding with a lie you've carried since puberty. No one prepares you for the aftermath of truth, of shattered illusions, of silence so loud it feels like its own kind of ceremony. So I turned to the crowd and said the only thing I truly felt. I need a moment. They nodded. Some of them smiled softly. A few stood, stretching, moving toward the back as if they could give me space even in a space built to stare. Josh and I stepped off the altar and slipped into the small side chapel where the bridal party had gathered earlier that day. And my dad followed. He didn't speak right away. He just sat down slowly on the bench beneath the stained glass window and took a long breath, like he was tasting air for the first time. I knew something was wrong, he finally said. I looked at him, surprised. I didn't know what it was, he continued, but I always felt it. The coldness, the way she controlled everything. I let it happen. I told myself it was for peace. For you. He looked up at me now, his eyes glassy. But peace built on lies isn't peace at all. My throat tightened. Dad, you don't need to apologize. He cut in gently. You were braver than I ever was. You did what I should have done years ago. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. It's not much, he said, handing it to me, but it's from your grandfather. Something he left me before he passed. I never gave it to your mother. I kept it, just in case. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a folded check, dated years ago, with my name written in my grandfather's handwriting. College fund, my dad said. She said you didn't need it because you had a scholarship, but he wanted you to have it. I covered my mouth with my hand, the tears finally slipping free. She had taken everything, even that. And still, I had survived her. My dad reached over, took my hand. Rachel, he said, I know this day didn't go how you planned, but if you want to walk back out there, if you want to marry Josh right now, I will walk you down that aisle. I looked at Josh. I looked at the letter in my lap. I looked at my reflection in the stained glass behind them. Not the dress, not the hair, not the picture-perfect bride I thought I'd be. Just me, clear-eyed, wounded, but whole. I want to finish this, I said, not because I needed a wedding to feel complete, but because I was ready to begin a life that wasn't built on pretending. Josh stood up, held out his hand. Then let's do it. Block 6. It wasn't perfect, it was real, and that made it beautiful. When I stepped back into the sanctuary, the energy had shifted. The tension was still there. The way you feel after an earthquake, when the dust is settling and the world is waiting to see what comes next. But it wasn't hostile. It wasn't judgmental. It was human, raw, tender, real. Josh walked beside me, hand in mine. My father flanked my other side, and I noticed something. No one pulled out their phone. No one whispered. No one rolled their eyes or looked for an exit. They just stood. All of them. Not as spectators, but as witnesses. I didn't ask the pianist to play. I didn't need a song. I didn't need a signal. Because the moment had already arrived. Not the one in the program. Not the one with flowers and rehearsed vows. But this one. The kind that splits a life in two. The before and the after. We walked back to the altar. Not as the picture-perfect couple in a catalog photo shoot, but as two people who had stared chaos in the face and still chosen each other. The priest, to his credit, adapted quickly. His voice was calm, soft, reverent. He skipped the small talk. We are here today to unite Rachel and Joshua in a commitment rooted not in illusion, but in truth. Not in performance, but in presence. I nearly cried at that. Because for so long, love in my world meant posturing, saying the right things, wearing the right smile, keeping the family secrets behind closed doors and polite silence. But Josh never asked me to be polished. He asked me to be honest. Even when I was shaking. Even when I didn't have the words. Even when I had just ripped my mother's legacy wide open in front of a full church. And still, he stayed. We didn't use the vows we'd written months ago. I couldn't. So I spoke from the gut. Josh, I said, my voice trembling. You've seen the ugliest parts of my past. You've seen the shadows I tried to hide. And instead of turning away, you opened every window and let the light in. I don't promise you perfection, but I promise you truth. Always. Even when it's hard. Even when it's messy. Especially then. He smiled, not the big photo-ready grin, just a soft one. Quiet, steady. The kind that says, I see you. I still want you. His turn. Rachel, he said, you didn't just survive what was done to you. You turned it into strength. You've shown me what courage looks like. And standing beside you today, it's not just an honor. It's a choice I'll keep making. Every day. For the rest of our lives. That was it. No dramatic music. No flower girls. Just a kiss that felt like a vow in itself. And applause. Not loud, not forced, but genuine. I looked out at the crowd and saw people wiping tears. Not out of sympathy, but something deeper. Recognition. Because we all know what it's like to wear masks, to smile through pain, to call things normal when they're anything but. But today, in that church, in that dress, with that man, I had finally stopped pretending. I didn't just get married. I got free. Block 7. She disappeared before the cake was even cut. The ceremony ended without fanfare, and honestly, that's exactly what I wanted. No staged bouquet toss. No forced line of congratulations. No choreographed dance number. Just people milling around the reception hall with small plates of lemon cake and nervous glances they were trying to disguise. And yet, for once, I didn't feel watched. I felt seen. Josh and I walked into the reception space hand in hand, and the first person to approach us was his mother, my mother-in-law now, Ellen. She didn't say anything at first, just pulled me into a hug that lasted long enough to make me forget how hollow my childhood ones had been. "I'm proud of you," she whispered into my ear. "And I mean really proud." I barely held it together. As guests began to approach, one by one, in hesitant waves, I braced myself for judgment, whispers, backhanded remarks. But that's not what I got. I got honesty. One woman, a friend of my mother's, took my hand and said, "I always wondered why you looked so nervous at your own baby shower. Today makes sense." A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years hugged me and whispered, "Took guts. She never let anyone speak." Even our pastor's wife, a woman known for her tight smiles and stricter opinions, gently squeezed my shoulder and said, "God honors truth. Never forget that." But not everyone spoke. My dad stayed close by, sipping a ginger ale, looking like a man who'd just walked out of a burning house. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. For the first time in years, he didn't look small in his own skin. Then came the questions. Where did your mom go? Did she leave? Is she okay? I shrugged. I don't know. Which was true. Because somewhere between me reading the letter and the start of the vows, Catherine Harper had vanished. Into her car, a cab, a hotel room, who knows? And she didn't leave a message, didn't text, didn't try to reclaim the narrative. That, more than anything, told me she was shaken. Not by shame. No. Catherine wasn't wired for guilt. She was wired for control, and for the first time in her life, she didn't control the story. I did. There were rumors, of course, whispers over appetizers, glances exchanged near the punch bowl. But the beauty of truth is that once it's spoken out loud, it can't be recaged. People may not say it to your face, but they start treating you differently. Not like a puppet, not like the girl from the perfect family, but like a woman who burned the script and walked off stage, alive. Later that night, while Josh was dancing with his niece, I stepped out onto the balcony for air. And that's when my phone lit up. A text. From a number I didn't recognize. But I knew who it was. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I hope you're happy. No greeting, no name, no apology. Just one final swipe at the only thing she ever truly cared about. How she looked. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed, I didn't do it to humiliate you. I did it to stop protecting you at my own expense. Please don't contact me again. Blocked. That was the last thing she ever said to me, and I was okay with that. Because for the first time, the silence between us wasn't a weapon. It was peace. Block 8. Freedom isn't loud. Sometimes it's just quiet. The Monday after the wedding, I woke up to birds. Not horns, not phone calls, Not the sound of Catherine's stilettos pacing the kitchen or barking instructions from the living room. Just birds. Josh had already gone downstairs to make coffee. When I came down, he handed me a mug without a word, just a smile. It was surreal. We didn't talk about the wedding. Not right away. It wasn't because we were avoiding it. We were just breathing. And I hadn't done that in a very long time. The following days were a blur of legal name changes, returning gifts, and writing thank you cards I knew I wouldn't send to half the people on the list. But one thing stood out. My mother didn't reach out again. No calls, no texts, no emails. Nothing. And I didn't chase her either. For once, I wasn't performing grief. I wasn't pretending to be the daughter she demanded. I let the silence stretch between us, not like a rope waiting to snap, but like a drawbridge rising for good. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail, a real one. No return address. I opened it carefully, expecting maybe another final stab from Catherine. But it wasn't from her. It was from him, the man from the letters. His name was Daniel Harker, and he was real. He said he was stunned to hear his name read aloud at my wedding. Word had traveled fast, apparently, through someone who'd been there. "I never thought you'd find the letters," he wrote. "And I never thought you'd say anything. Your mother always said you were too loyal for that. But maybe I underestimated you, just like she did." I didn't know how to feel. Angry, curious, vindicated. He went on. "I don't want anything from you. I'm not writing to stir more chaos. I just wanted you to know. I asked about you once. I wanted to meet you when you were little." She shut it down. Said I had no place in your life. Maybe she was right. But I wanted to say, "I'm proud of you." That last line sat with me for a long time. Longer than I wanted it to. Because I didn't want it to matter. Not after everything. Not after the dust had finally started to settle. But it did. It mattered because the man who helped shatter my childhood, the ghost I thought I deburned in a fire pit, was now the first person from that past to say the one thing my mother never could. "I'm proud of you." I folded the letter and locked it in the bottom drawer of my desk. I didn't respond. Not because I hated him. Not because I forgave him. But because I didn't need anything more from him. Closure doesn't always come in conversations. Sometimes it comes in boundaries. Sometimes it's walking away from a door you spent your whole life knocking on, realizing the person inside was never going to open it, and that you're no longer waiting. That was the week I took off my wedding dress for the last time. Not the physical one. That was boxed up in the closet. I mean the idea of it. The performance. The perfection. The pleasing. I wasn't anyone's bride, or daughter, or prop. I was Rachel Harper. And I was free. Block 9. Some ghosts don't haunt you. They just wait to see if you'll come looking. 6 months passed. The seasons changed. Our house started to feel like a home. I learned how Josh took his coffee, way too much sugar. And he learned how I shut down when I felt cornered. We didn't fix each other. We just saw each other. And that, I realized, was more intimate than any honeymoon could ever be. I started therapy. It wasn't pretty. I cried the first session, laughed the third, went silent during the fifth. But something clicked by the seventh. My therapist asked me, "When was the last time you felt proud of yourself? Not for surviving something, but just for being?" I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But I was working on it. I began writing again. Nothing serious, just a journal. But the words came in like waves, scattered, messy, sometimes angry, sometimes soft. And the more I wrote, the more the old stories started to feel smaller, still painful, but not defining. Josh read one of my entries by accident one night. He didn't ask for permission. He just found the notebook on the couch and flipped it open while waiting for dinner to finish. "I didn't mean to read it," he said, "but I'm glad I did." I thought I'd be furious, but I wasn't, because he didn't quote it back to me, didn't analyze it, didn't hug me like I was broken glass. He just kissed my forehead and said, "I like who you're becoming." And for the first time in a very long time, so did I. Then, one cold Wednesday morning, I got the letter. Not a message, not a call, a real ink-on-paper letter from Catherine. The envelope was beige, the handwriting tight and practiced, like every word had been rewritten in her head 5 times before it touched the page. I stared at it for almost an hour. Josh saw it on the counter and said nothing. Just gave me space. He knew I needed to decide what version of myself would open it. When I finally did, it was only 3 sentences long. "You got what you wanted. I hope it was worth the destruction. One day you'll understand what it means to be a mother." That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just a final twist of the knife disguised as maternal wisdom. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just folded the letter and placed it in the fire pit behind our house. The same kind I used to burn her old secrets as a teenager. And I watched it disappear. That night I wrote a new journal entry. Today I didn't take the bait. Today I didn't carry someone else's guilt. Today I didn't call silence love. Today I was free. And not because she's gone, but because I left. Block 10. She taught me everything I never want to be. A year later, I stood in the middle of my kitchen holding a baby monitor in one hand and a spatula in the other, listening to the sound of soft breathing coming from the nursery upstairs. Her name is Lena Rose. Josh picked the middle name, said it reminded him of strength wrapped in softness, of women who carry storms and still find ways to bloom. Sometimes, I wonder if she'll ever ask about Catherine. My therapist says I don't need to have the answer now, that I'll know what to say when the time comes. But part of me already knows. I'll tell her the truth. The age-appropriate truth. Not to punish anyone, not to pass down scars, but to show her what silence can cost, and what courage can build. Josh and I talk about legacy now. Not money, not homes, but emotional inheritance. What do we want her to know? To feel, to unlearn. Because the truth is, I come from a long line of women who survived by pretending, who smiled through damage, who learned how to manipulate and perform because vulnerability was too dangerous. But Lena won't inherit that. She'll inherit choice. And more than that, permission. Permission to speak, to question, to walk away when love comes with conditions. I never got that. But I've built it, brick by brick, moment by moment. Starting with the day I walked down an aisle and told the truth instead of just saying, "I do." Sometimes people ask me if I regret doing it. If I wish I'd just let my mother have her moment. If I regret the fallout. The family silence. The tension that still exists in certain corners of Thanksgiving tables. My answer is always the same. No. Because she would have torched my life either way. The only difference is now I am standing in the ashes on my own terms, with love beside me and truth beneath my feet. And when I look at Lena, when she smiles with eyes that hold no fear, no second guessing, no inherited shame, I know I broke the cycle. And that was worth everything.